Hello and welcome to a final edition of Dub at the Cup. We've just finished the Women's World Cup and Spain have been announced winners. And we've got, when you get to the last episode of the podcast, you've got to bring back the original crew. And lucky enough to be joined by Western United new signing and star, Grace Maher. Grace, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Pokuah. How are you?
I'm not too bad. And then, Grace, I know you're probably feeling pretty good because, you picked one of those players who was going to do well at the tournament, and she did. And you know what? Also, we're lucky enough to be joined by Pellizzeri, who's sitting on a bit of a high horse at the moment because he did pick the winner of the tournament. Teo, how are you feeling being the man who knows all?
It seems as though, Pokuah, you have decided how I feel and what I'm thinking and what direction I'm going to be steering the conversation. And you know what? Maybe that's just reflective of us having spent too much time around each other for the last month because, yeah, baby, I was right. Spain all the way. Called it from day. No, I'm kidding. Look, it was a very interesting final, and podcast subscribers and YouTube viewers will have seen both the chat with Izzy Hodgson before the final and the chat with Dylan Holmes after the final about some of the fallout and what this means for football in Spain. Women's WOSO Twitter, women's soccer Twitter, for those of you uninitiated, but for those of you that know it, WOSO Twitter, Pokuah, was not having a normal one after this game, not least when the Spanish Federation tweeted out Vilda in with a photo of him kissing the trophy. Now, I enjoy Spain's football, and I have said on this podcast I was going to hold my nose about the rest of the stuff and enjoy how they play. Grace, Pokuah, tell us how you feel about how Spain have reacted to winning the World Cup.
It is a bittersweet, isn't it? Because I like to think that they've managed to achieve this incredible feat, not having even made semi-finals. This is only their third World Cup, despite the federation and the coaching staff and what a lot of players have had to go through, even the ones that stood up and didn't get selected because of that. So I like to congratulate the Spanish players for being able to achieve something that, this is, I guess, history repeating itself in when we see the men's and how dominant the Spanish national team was, in 2010 and before that. So yeah, I think it's really hard as a player who's come up and not had the best of coaches at times and suffered because of that and had setbacks because of that. I really feel for a lot of the players, but I think the ones that are there are going to be too high on winning a World Cup to see what the real truth behind that whole story is.
I've got to say, Grace, watching the final, there was a part of me as a football fan, I was very excited about this final because I think it was after the group stages and we saw all the teams that were left. I think this was the best final football wise we were going to get. And I think it delivered on that. I think the Spanish Federation, I think they're feeling, high and mighty right now, but I just think it's inappropriate. Quite frankly, like that Vilda tweet was incredibly inappropriate, particularly the timing of it was so quickly after, because there was one post, I think, about the players, and then straight away there's this solo shot of Vilda kissing the trophy. And I couldn't believe it when I saw it. I've never, the federations, I think, ultimately have to be there to support the players, because without the players, you don't have a national team that is this successful. And, backing the coach, sure, he's got them there. I like to think that all the work before, the build-up that they've done in terms of getting their players to this level has got them this national team that's able to be this successful and that playing style. I don't think it really comes down that much to Jorge Vilda, but ultimately the Spanish Federation are going to do what the Spanish Federation are going to do. But I think as football fans, we're happy for the players, but, Jorge Vilda, you do you, man.
Okay, this is unashamedly devil's advocate, but is it pushing it a bit much? Some Twitter users were trying to dox the Spanish Federation social media manager, posting LinkedIn profiles, trying to find out who it was. Others were claiming that Mappy Leon and Claudia Pina and Patrick Guajaro were the real heroes for not playing. I mean, okay, I realize I'm the bloke on this panel, but, you play to win the game. Am I just boiling this down to something a bit too simplistic, that if you have a football World Cup, you play football and you try to win the World Cup? Or is this actually something that is bigger than football and I have simply missed the memo that the real heroes were somehow the ones that weren't on the pitch and weren't even in Australia?
I think what we need to recognize in this modern world is football and politics are mixing, and there is a lot less pressure on the players to, I guess, go ignore and for example, go through things that they're not happy with. We're in a world now, and you see this outside of sport too, where there's a lot more freedom for choice and for who they want to be, and a lot more, I guess, support for those that want to stand up and morally, stand up for what they believe in or what they think is right, and fair treatment. And, we won't know, and I doubt that we ever will unless we're someone inside the federation, what exactly went on. We get peeps here and there, but a lot of it was sealed of actual examples of these claims of bullying and harassment and just mental and physical distress. So look, I'm in awe of those Spanish players that managed to miss out on a World Cup, and it would be really hard for them watching their teammates win this World Cup, not being a part of it. So I've never been in this position where I've had to make that decision. So I could never say what I would do. And so I think it's one of those things where let's celebrate the achievements of the players. But I do hope that it still shines a light on a lot of the injustices that happen around the federations, between the players' federations. We're very lucky in Australia with the PFA and the CBAs and all these negotiations that have happened prior to this tournament. I just hope that it doesn't mean that those players who missed out of this World Cup, that they're out forever.
I'll say, I think that it must have been also incredibly difficult for those players who chose to come back to the national team. I think there's also an element of courage to come back into that national team and just try and focus on football for a month, knowing how they feel about Jorge Vilda. I think you have to be incredibly courageous to do that, knowing that there are other people who didn't make that same decision, who are also courageous in their decision to not, come to the World Cup. I don't think it's a really simple answer about, if you come or if you don't come to the World Cup. And I think it's equally difficult because I think if you look at the likes of Alexia Putellas throughout the tournament, I don't think she looked particularly pleased the whole time while there. And I don't think the relationship during camp was particularly harmonious for the whole group with Jorge Vilda, but they had a goal to win a World Cup. And I think winning a World Cup means a lot to a lot of players, and could be the highest achievement, and if you've got an opportunity with the group and the talent that the Spanish had, and these guys wanted to put their all in for a month to win this tournament, I think kudos to them as well.
Yeah. And every person, there will be critics that go for what we say and against what we say everywhere. And so it's just, at the end of the day, you have to look at what you believe is morally right. And I think that changes from person to person. That's why you saw some miss out, some not put their name forward, some come back, some stay the whole time. That's just, unfortunately, that's how the world works in a way.
Well, the other thing I found interesting was we saw this Spanish team come out for the Cup of Nations, very different looking team. Some of the players that Vilda used, like Alba Redondo, won their spots back in the starting 11 and played for the tournament. Some of his nominative favourites, like an Atenea del Castillo, not used at all. And if anything, she was the centrepiece of most of Spain's creativity and attacking in the Cup of Nations, and even scored a few goals in that tournament in Australia. So what can we make of just the fail-safe and the safety net of having such a deep squad that I'm not sure we saw Atenea after the group stage? Correct me if I'm wrong, if she did get subbed on in any of the knockout games. It's just outrageous. I mean, a lot of people are saying the car drives itself, but, coaches exist for a reason. That if players could self-coach, they would. But the team still needs all the support staff and all of that direction. And none of the players wanted to celebrate with Vilda, but he still had a circle of, assistant coaches and trainers and others surrounding him at full time. So, Grace, what did you make of just Spain's depth of talent? Because the conclusion that a number of people are drawing after this tournament is they are going to keep winning for a long time, and only self-sabotage can stop them from here.
Absolutely. And I think you always have to look domestically to find the answers to international success. And you look at all the leagues around the world, in the top European leagues, Australia, America, the match minutes available in Spain, they've got 2 tiers of fully professional teams, 15 teams, 30 games, 16 teams, 30 games, plus cup games, plus Champions League. So first off, they're building the depth because they've got a rich culture in football and history in the men's. They've taken that into the women's over the last few years. You've got the only Hermoso was playing outside of Spain. So domestically, you've got all your best players. I think 10 or 11 with a new signing were from Barcelona. So they're achieving football in the highest level in Europe. And I think there's a reason that they're successful and only growing because of that domestic competition. And then on top of that, you've got 4 or 5 like world-class players. And I think Jorge Vilde, he played the players in form. The decision to start Salma in the final was brilliant. I thought she covered the three centre backs and so it meant Spain had so many more players in the midfield. And yeah, so it's their depth is super important because it meant that there wasn't a designated starting lineup. It was a bit more flexible. And like you said, people that you would have thought were a shoo-in, which in Australia played anyway, lost their spot throughout the tournament and rotation. Fatigue as well, is a huge one. But I think those players are used to playing multiple games back to back as well. So I just think it's no coincidence. I didn't think they would get there this quickly, but you're right. I do think it looks scary for the players coming through. It's just going to be succession, and it's how do teams adapt and try to keep up with them.
I think it says something about developing a national identity in football and having a system that's able to be followed from a young age, and the players growing up playing a really a style of football that translates to their domestic competition, as you mentioned, Grace, and then also to a national level, because as many coaches, international coaches will state that you don't have that much time, at camps and things like that. So if you have an identity already and the players are coming into that system, it allows them to be more successful because you're not deviating too much from that system anyway. When you think about that, Grace, do you think that's the next step in terms of Australian football and building a more solid foundation of what our footballing identity is?
It's hard, isn't it? Because if I'm saying honestly, as much as I believe the A-League women's can be a destination for really good players, whether I believe it's the best to have 22 out of our 23 in that league, I don't think it is. Where you then see the issue with that identity question is we've got players going over to teams that play completely different styles. You've got players in Sweden in a very transitional league, at big clubs in England who like to dominate possession, at smaller clubs in England who are comfortable playing without the ball for 90 minutes. So I know in the past when a lot of the players weren't playing over in big clubs and under Stage, and even before that, it was very much high intensity, sit back, absorb. And you've still seen that through Ante Milicic and Tony Gustafsson. But you're now starting to get players like Ellie Carpenter, who's maybe more comfortable with a team who likes to possess the ball, give her time to get forward. Caitlin Ford, ball at her feet, Sam Kerr, ball on a dime. That I think it's going to be really hard for our national team to have an identity that's representing in our domestic league and internationally, because I don't believe we, at this point and in the next 5 years, having everyone playing in Australia is what's best for the national team.
Hey, Pokuah, who was the Australian that was playing in the Spanish league in the season just gone?
Oh,
that's right. It was Beatty Goad.
It was Beatty Goad.
Justice for Beatty Goad. All right.
You're saying Beatty Goad, and I'm thinking about Beatty Goad in the NPL Nike FC Cup finals. So that's what I'm thinking about Beatty Goad at the moment.
Now, Grace, the defeated England. The analysis has definitely focused in quite heavily on the goal and on the halftime substitutions. Yeah. Give us your takeaways from those, or anything else that caught your eye as to why England fell short in this final.
Yeah, it was, Teo, you had pointed out before about the tactical masterclass that was this final, and Sarah Wiegman and her need for or like for consistency, and Lauren James coming back in, and so many possibilities and adjustments, especially when Kira Walsh was out for a game. So I think when you watched England versus Australia in that semi-final, the 3-5 or the 3-4-1-2, however you want to say it, but the back three really hurt us, because the attacking full wing backs in Daly and Bronze were putting lots of pressure on our defenders, and we weren't able to get out and exploit the space they've left. Spain, on the other hand, who are far better or technically superior and a lot more comfortable playing out in their defensive third under pressure, were able to exploit that space. And so what I saw was, a lot of space in between the sidelines, or in behind Lucy Bronze and Rachel Daly. On top of that, if they pulled Jess Carter or Alex Greenwood out, Selma was able to exploit 1v1 every single defender on the ground. Like, that's why she was so important to play that role instead of Hermoso, who's probably, while she's just as physically dominant, she's probably not as quick and not as willing to run. So tactically, Spain were on top. And I think I really love Sarah Wiegman as a coach. I think she's brilliant and she's brave. And I love that she didn't wait for 5 minutes into the second half. She made the substitutions and she tweaked the formation. And you saw pretty quickly, there was a few times Alessia Russo was played or could have been played in behind, but she doesn't have the raw pace that was going to outpace the Spanish defenders. So she identified, all right, we're going to need Hemp and Chloe Kelly's pace. And you did see Chloe Kelly make an impact and threaten in behind. There was no end product in that, but it definitely pulled Spain back, got Lucy Bronze a lot more on the ball and higher, even in a back four. And the second half, they looked a lot more comfortable. I just think Sarah Wiegman had a wish maybe she made that decision prior to the game starting.
So I think the big issue was they threw Millie Bright forward at the end, though, having subbed off Alessia Russo at halftime. So in terms of a bit of buyer's remorse on making that bold call, is that just the way the game shook out? And as you say, the pace of Kelly and Hemp wasn't able to get them the equaliser. Lauren James forced a very good save out of the goalkeeper, Kata Cole, as well. It's worth remembering with about 11 minutes to go. But ultimately, is Serena Wiegman, when she goes and does her personal review of the game, saying, should have found a way to keep Russo on, so that when we were throwing it forward in the dying stages, it's her up there trying to win the headers and not Millie Bright?
Yeah, hard. I think the thing is that by keeping Russo on, for the half, you're losing what Chloe Kelly was providing as well. And Russo, I haven't seen play out wide. I don't know, so I'm not going to judge on what she's like, but I would assume she's probably not as dominant as she is as a 9. Hemp was having a good tournament, of back end of the tournament too, so that was probably her reason for keeping her on. I think the throwing up Millie Bright, it's been done by Chelsea before as well, and she's fantastic in the air, but she's also quite good at her feet and holding the ball up. So I think that was the dying stages. That was, okay, I've made this play at half time. I'm now reassessing right at the end with the dying 13 minutes of stoppage time, to try find something similar to, the Alana Kennedy move. It is just desperate measures in a World Cup that probably was decided. And unfortunately, on the bench, the players that she had to bring on, Beth England, while she can score out of nothing, she pounces off mistakes, and Spain just weren't making mistakes in that game. Yeah.
I thought that I was surprised at the 2 subs that Serena Wiegman made to take Daly and Russo off at the same time. I understood taking Russo off because I just think that Russo the game didn't suit her playing style. I think, if you bring her in the latter parts of the game, I think that's where she can really pounce on if everybody's, a little bit more fatigued, and she can go at it. I thought Serena Wiegman's unwillingness to use Rachel Daly up front, I think that cost her. I think that if you take Russo off and you keep Daly on, and you get into the latter parts of the game, Daly, she's the top scorer in the WSL. She can provide something, and she's a different type of striker to Alessia Russo. And I think if you bring James on first and you have Daly on still, that gives a new look to the attack that I wish Serena Wiegmann may have opted to use more, and she really limited herself in the end. But I do think England got substantially better in the second half as well. It just, as you said, Grace, Spain weren't making enough mistakes for them to really capitalize on anything.
Yeah.
I've got to wonder, do you think, Grace, when you look back on this tournament, did it go the way you thought it was going to go? Obviously, we had so many big teams leave in the group stages, but overall, was it the tournament you expected?
I didn't even know what I was expecting from the tournament. I definitely didn't see Germany going out in the group stages. I definitely didn't think Australia were going to be so comfortable making the quarterfinals too, those sorts of things, where there was actually a lot of knockout games that teams found quite comfortable. I even think with England in the semi-final, it was quite comfortable. So I think that was interesting, but I definitely didn't have any expectations for what it was going to be like, or predictions of really knowing. So it was really pleasing. I think Japan would just be sitting there being like, wow, how did we screw that one up? Because I know Spain went on their game, but Japan, to win another World Cup, they are going to have to find a way that isn't relying on luck of the draw to not come up against the big, tall, physical teams, because they have so much quality that they're a team that can do that to Spain, because they are technically superior. But you have to beat Spain coming up against Sweden and against the England in the final. They showed that they've got the technique to keep the ball off plays, but they've also, if they need to, they'll play physically and they'll play dirty. So they match that physicality, and that's ultimately that, just, I guess, all-round ability that they have to play against different nations is what's won them this World Cup.
My big picture question is, first time with 32 teams, should there have been more days between games? It feels, my greatest concern was that some teams would go a game too far and exhibit signs of burnout. Depth in international women's football is a factor. We know that Serena Wiegmann called for squad sizes of 26, and a lot of people were confused by that because she hadn't rotated her squad much at the Euros. But then we see in this tournament, she really could have used the depth, especially once fatigue and suspension started kicking in. I don't think there's a way for FIFA to make their international tournaments smaller. It's just not what they do. We can't go back to a 6-game World Cup to lift the trophy. It's going to have to be 7 games. But I think it should be 7 games over maybe an extra 4 or 5 days, because it did feel as though some of the games were diminished by teams coming off just a bit too short of a turnaround.
See, this is where I'll disagree. I actually think this format, the women had more rest days on average than the men in the men's World Cup. Australia, on most, like 3 or 4 of their games, they had a week turnaround. That's like a season. So I'm not 100% sure. I didn't keep track of every team and what their rest days were like. But I know for pot A and B, they were very well catered for. And this is where I like tournament football, and I like that it's a short turnaround, because it demands that you do rotate your squad, because you bring 23, and a team that wins the World Cup, it cannot be 12 players that you rely on. And you're kidding yourself. We talked about Australia looking so flat in the semi-final, towards the end of the semi-final, and then in the playoff. Like, that's no excuse. You have all these players who didn't play a minute. I think it's plenty of time. And maybe the 2-day turnaround hurt, but at the end of the day, you're going to win a tournament with more than 11 players. And if you're trying to do it with 11 players, good luck to you.
I was going to say, Grace, you're preaching to the choir on this one. I think I agree with you. And I think when you hear like the likes of Serena Wiegmann talking about the fact that she wants a bigger squad, and how much she doesn't want to, rotate her squad, that's when you know that it's important to depth is important. And the 23, they should be used. And I don't want to get too much into the Matildas at the moment, but it's I think that's when teams are doing their tournament review. I think heading into the next World Cup and next major tournament, they will be utilizing more of their players. That's all I got to say on that one.
Well, let's get some final thoughts on the Matildas then, Grace, because we know the Olympic qualifiers are coming up at the end of October and start of November. It is actually a really short turnaround. First question, existential. If the US comes in for Tony Gustafsson, should he take the job? Should Football Australia, actually, you don't have to answer this one as an active player. Pokuah, I'll ask this one to you. Should Tony Gustafsson take the US job if it's offered to him? Secondly, should Football Australia offer Tony Gustafsson a contract extension through until the end of the 2027 World Cup?
I'll answer the last question first. I don't believe Football Australia should be offering Tony Gustafsson a contract. I think, obviously making the semi-final is fantastic, but I think based on what we saw last night and the quality of the football we saw from both those teams, I think I know we finished fourth in this tournament, but I think we are a very long way off that. And Tony Gustafsson has had a long time with this squad. Obviously, COVID interrupted it and things like that. But I think that if he goes till the Olympics, that is perfectly fine. That's how long his contract is. But I do think we should be looking for another coach to potentially take us to another level, because I think he's taken this squad as far as they can in terms of the playing style. I don't think we've seen enough evolution in the playing style with this squad to justify maybe him getting another contract. And I don't think things are going to change enough for us to catch up to the likes of Spain and England, for say.
It's amazing how at times it did resemble the 2022 Asian Cup of just long balls from central positions for Sam Kerr to go and chase. And due to Kerr being physically curtailed, we couldn't have the same level of cross spam for Kerr to just go and leap after everything that we'd also seen. Certainly, the results and enlivening the nation and bringing everyone on the journey, we are grateful for. Don't get me wrong. But no, I think to the Olympics is fine as well. But I guess there's a job security issue here. If he's only got until the end of 2024 on his contract, isn't that kind of, if a different country comes in for him? What if Peter Gerhardsson steps away from Sweden? It's not just America that might be looking for a coach. Hey, men's football or women's club football could come in for him. Never mind that his assistant, Jens Fellstrom, he's got many strings to his bow. He's not just an assistant coach. He's an analyst. He's a scout, and he works in television. If anything, he's the one that we need to make sure that he is secure. If it's Tony, it's got to be the package. It can't just be Tony on his own.
I'll say that I think that the United States and Tony Gustafsson, it feels like a match made in heaven. It feels like that's the ultimate job for him. Obviously, he was the assistant coach there in the past, but I feel like his personality and his playing style suits the way in which the American national team wants to play. And I would be surprised if it's not a job that if they went to him, I'd be surprised if he didn't take an interview with them and see it out. I think that you got to do your due diligence if you are him. But Tony Gustafsson has done a job for the Australian national team and has got them as far as I think he can get them. But we'll have to wait and see. And I think the results ultimately will dictate it.
Grace, let's flip this discussion a little bit. If you're the US Federation, who are you looking for to take the team in a new direction? Does it need a new direction, or are you still happy for them to bring back the likes of Alex Morgan to remain, part of their squad going into the 2024 Olympics?
I think if they are watching, I know Jill Ellis has been a big advocate for Tony, and under her success, whether that's persuading a lot of people as to why, based off Jill's preference, why Tony should be the man for the job. But I think, look, with the US, as much as this was a really poor performance, for a coach to come in, it's quite attractive. And I think they'll be able to basically have their pick of the lot, because they're coming in for the Olympics. It knocks out 5 top European teams because only 3 can go through. The US is nearly always safe in qualifying for the Olympics. And also they've learned from their mistakes. The bar, as much as the US is still expected to win, the bar is set far lower because of how poorly they not only did in this World Cup, but played. And there's also a real call for squad rejuvenation, as well as bringing back the injured players in Mal Pugh, Kristen Lewis,
Katarina
Macario, huge loss. Actually, completely forgot how good a form she was in coming into this World Cup. So yeah, I think the US will absolutely go after Tony, but I'm sure they'll have people lined up that I might not even be aware of. Top coaches that it's even an attractive offer for men coaching in the men's world as well, to come in and coach a national team like that. A lot of coaches, it's a very different lifestyle. They're able to base themselves at home with families. There's a lot of draw cards to these national team and a lot of complexity as to why someone would take a national team and step away from a club. So very interested to see. I do think, they'll be after Tony, but I do know with the Matildas that I don't think, if he stays or not, there should be too much worry, because there are a lot of high caliber coaches now that probably will be very keen to take the Matildas. Some that have perhaps coached in our domestic league and maybe in Italy now. So, there's many options. And I just can't wait to, I don't know, the Matildas, I just saw a thing today about what their new worth is. It's a whole new ball game for them. And I hope that it just grows, and regardless of who's in charge, I'm sure the team will keep producing the goods.
There you go, Calcio fans. Cesar Cosme, coach of the Matildas. And here I was gassing him up for Western United when they first came into the A-League. All right, Grace, very well said. I'm not going to leave you on the hot seat talking about the Matildas, though, because, of course, you, like many A-League players, are going to be aspiring to break in as part of the next generation as we move on for the next round of A-League season and consideration for selection. And speaking of selections, let's get to our last little item here, because we have prepared some teams of the tournament, and we're also just going to take a little sneaky look back into the crystal ball as we do so, to see how we went with our pre-tournament predictions. Now, Pokuah, how we might do this, because I have deliberately picked a team with as few similarities as possible, so that we don't all come up with slot machines here on our selections in each position. So, Pokuah, maybe you be our leadoff hitter. Grace Maher, you then give us who you picked, and then I will bring it home with a point of difference. So let's start with goalkeepers. Pokuah, who have you got between the sticks as your goalkeeper in your team of the tournament?
I think it was an easy pick for me personally. I've gone with Musovic, the Swedish goalkeeper. I think she was phenomenal throughout the whole tournament, and I think she was a real point of difference for Sweden and why they got as far as they did.
Good to see an Arsenal fan picking a Chelsea player. The rivalry is massively overstated. Grace Maher, who is your goalkeeper of the tournament?
I've gone for the consistency and also coming up big if you winning a penalty shootout. So I've gone for Mackenzie Arnold. I thought she had a fantastic tournament. Would have been capped off if she had scored that penalty, but she got to pull off a few more saves after that. I just think there was a lot of contenders. There was no one that stood out where it was a no-brainer as well for this tournament. A lot of good things, but I definitely think she saved the save she needed to, and got her team into a penalty into a semi-final.
Well, you've left the golden glove for me. I will pick Mary Earps. Thanks and success. All right. Now, we've both picked back fours here, so it means we can go position for position. Left back, Pokuah, who do you like at left back?
This was I think the most difficult one that I had. I went with Anderson from Sweden. I feel like it's an odd choice, but I thought the Swedish defense were really good throughout the tournament, and I was going to pick Steph Catley, but I can't overlook the last two games, and the Swedes were pretty solid throughout the whole tournament, and she was their starting left back, so I'm going to go with her.
I initially had Venegas, but after putting a semi-final and a final winner, I couldn't go past Carmona. Not only was she, scoring match winners as a left back, the way she led that team and came up big time for her country, can't go past her.
So Olga Carmona for Grace. I am going to pick Selma Basha from France, because was leaning towards Catley, but I've found a position for an Australian elsewhere in the team. I needed at least one Aussie, and Catley was probably one of the standouts, more so from a leadership point of view. We all saw how it ended in the semi-final. But no, I'm going for Salma Basho because I think that she's one of the best players in her position in the world, and I still think she had a pretty good tournament, even if a lot of people spent time booing her and Kashawi during the game against Australia. I'm not down with that. All right, let's go to centre-backs. We all have a 2 centre-back combination. We have slot machines on one position. All 3 of us picked Ilstead. So Pokuah and Grace, a word on Ilstead and her phenomenal World Cup.
Well, Tayo, if you're going to score, 4 goals throughout the tournament at centre back, be an attacking threat and a defensive maestro, and it helps that she wears a certain badge, in the domestic competition. But no, I think Ilse was phenomenal throughout this tournament. I think she was really solid for the Swedish defense, and I've already talked about how much I like the Swedish defense throughout this tournament. So it was easy pickings, that one.
Yeah, if you're scoring as a centre back and keeping it calm at the back, you can't go past it. She's gone above and beyond for what you'd expect. So yeah, player of the tournament, 4 goals. I'm sure that she'll won't forget that anytime soon.
All right, so Amanda Ilstead in all of our teams of the tournament. The other centre back, I believe you have agreed on this one, but I'll let you reveal. Pokuah, who'd you choose?
I have gone with Alex Ringwood. I think she had a phenomenal tournament, considering that she wasn't technically playing in her natural position. Playing at centre back, I thought without Leah Williamson, I thought the English were going to struggle, but she really stepped up. She was really composed, great partnership with Millie Bright throughout the tournament. So, and playing in a back 3 and a back 4 at times, I thought she was really, really good throughout the tournament.
Yeah, solid. From a statistical point of view, she did really well the whole tournament. Consistency. And flew under the radar because England, didn't go without a loss in the early stages. So, she's also her delivery on set pieces with that left foot. She's world class actually, and probably not really spoken about in the same even ballpark as Steph Catley. So she is got killer delivery too. So she was creating chance after chance from the dead ball. And like you said, was able to adapt from a back 3 and a back 4 seamlessly.
Now, the Armoured Tortoise got out of the group, and they did so because of Alison Swaby. What a player. And Cup of Nations, Jamaica, I'll be honest, they were a vibes team, and they came to this World Cup with a hard edge. They got serious. They sharpened up. They brought us to tears, but gee, they played well. And so Alison Swaby gets the nod for me as my other centre-back next to Amanda Ilstead.
Nice.
All right. Let's go right backs. Pokuah?
I've gone with the Spanish. How do I pronounce her name?
See, some people have said Batya. I've heard club commentators say Balya on a Balya.
We'll go with that. I thought she was phenomenal throughout this tournament, and I thought I can't really. It's so strange. I can't picture what she was sensational at, but every time I saw the Spanish play, I was like, "You're it." And
she nearly scored in the final. I mean, that would have been one heck of a way to cap off her tournament.
Exactly. But I just also couldn't think of anybody else better throughout the tournament in her position. So it was an easy choice, that one.
Yeah, I went with Lucy Bronze, but it's one of those ones where I wasn't happy to pick anyone, I don't think, because Lucy didn't have an amazing final, but I do look back to the group stages and the consistency, her composure. She gets forward, but I also just had to pick her because of her gamesmanship and her tactics. She's hilarious when it comes to throw-ins and just also taking her sweet time, the game management. So I think.
How big a role did she play in Jenny Hermoso not scoring the penalty as well?
Huge. And she didn't even blink an eye to take that risk and put herself on a yellow card, which then could result, in a sending off because of the way Lucy Bronze plays. I'm sure she left a few players playing a worse game because of the tackle she put on them too. She's so strong. And I mean, you've seen what she's winning her accolades, but I think because she's such a rated player, people often go, "Oh, wasn't outstanding," but she's a right back.
Yeah, my hand's up on that one. All right, those are our defenses. Now, I've gone for a midfield 4. You've both gone for a midfield 3. We have one mutual player across our teams. Pokuah, lead us off. Who's your midfield 3?
So I've gone in the role of the 6. I've gone with Kira Walsh, even though she missed that one game. I think that I don't think there's any player better in the world in that 6 role. I think Bonmati plays a little bit higher. But no, Walsh was phenomenal. The way she controlled the game for England when they were at their best, and the spaces she occupies without the ball, I think is world class. And I think she was phenomenal throughout the tournament.
Give us all 3.
Okay. Yep. So I got Bonmati. I think that's self-explanatory. Teo, you're already singing her praises, but she's phenomenal. And then I've got Hermoso there as well. I think when she came back into playing in the role of the 10, as opposed to playing as that false 9, I think she shone throughout this tournament. Her passing ability, she may not be the quickest, but her decision-making as well, and playing her teammates in is second to none. So I've gone with Hermoso, Bonmati, and Kira Walsh.
And we've only got the one difference. I've gone with Bonmati and Hermoso as well. But my defensive midfielder is Kyra Cooney-Cross, and I picked her. 1, she had an outstanding tournament. But 2, I think the 3 of them in combination would be a scary midfield.
Are you saying Kyra to Barcelona?
Well, but then when you get
Hermoso went to Mexico. So
yeah. But there's definitely not off the cards for the future, is it? I think Kyra has the discipline. Bonmati is so versatile in what the team needs, so she would be able to read off Kyra. But this tournament, I could only dream to play like Bonmati, and she's only a year older than me. She's phenomenal in her movement off the ball, so deserving of the golden ball. Kyra, her ability to consistently turn 2 plays and use her speed when she needs this tournament just put her above and really showed her class. And then Hermoso is just I cannot, when I watch her, get over the length of her legs and the ease that she moves around the pitch. She doesn't look like she's trying. It's in ways a bit similar to Mary and Mary Fowler and Lauren James in that ease and just that calmness. Even when she's lost the ball, she hasn't, because she's got her legs there. And it would have been so good if she had scored that penalty for this team of the tournament, but she still was class, and she was one of their mainstays and in the whole tournament too.
All right, my midfield, I have Bonmati in there. I agree with you. I picked Katrina Gorry. I was looking to find an Australian somewhere, and I decided to play 4 in midfield in order to achieve that. I have put in a bit of a latecomer, actually, in terms of how she played in the tournament. I've got Fridolina Rolfo in there because I think she made a bit of a late run and got better as the tournament went on. And my wild card pick, and this player, again, coming from a team that kept 3 clean sheets at this tournament, and Randy Waldrum, when he looked in his midfield, he saw Christy Uchebe winning the ball relentlessly. Yeah. What a good player, Christy Uchebe. I like it. Now, I've put her in. And did I mention my right back? Or did we skip straight to midfield with that? I skipped it. All right. Well, my other right back, this is fitting, also from Nigeria, Michelle Alozie.
She was sensational in that game against England. And I almost wanted to, but I had to pick someone that went a bit further.
Well, that's the thing. I think Nigeria, they went out on penalties to the team that made the final. They kept 3 clean sheets out of 4 games. So, Michelle Alozie and Christy Uchebe, both, I think, very deserving of a spot in the team of the tournament. All right, let's go to the forward lines. You've both picked a front 3, and you have 2 players similar. Grace, I'll let you speak to Miyazawa and Hemp, both of whom have appeared in your teams.
Yeah, I've gone with the front with Miyazawa up top, Hemp on the right, and Caicedo, Michael on the left. So, look, I think Hemp is a player that shouldn't be as effective as she is, but she is so effective, and she grew into the tournament too, and she's just so dangerous. She's a bulldozer, and she just is aggressive, fast. She gives 100% of the time, and she was a big outlet for England, and was called upon a lot of times to find something extra, and she did. So I think she had a great tournament, and is a great player that I loved prior to this tournament, watching at Man City too. I love her aggression to run at plays, and I saw glimpses of that in Caitlin Ford, which I hope to see more. Miyazawa, you score 5 goals in the tournament in a team that's smashing teams is very impressive. Also super young, so she's very excited to see how she'll grow. I think she had a great tournament. Would have had more goals in her if that Japan hadn't gone out. Classy, and yeah, you can't go past Golden Boot to in your team of the tournament. And then obviously Linda Caicedo, I stick by her because I think given what she was asked, not only was she incredible in coming up in the big moments, but I was so impressed with how effective she was defensively too. So I was almost going to have her as a wing back because she is quick, fast, measured, strong, and she did that consistently in all of Colombia's games, and then pulled off some magic that I still think will be goal of the tournament. So yeah, they're my three.
So Pokuah, you had 1 point of difference from Grace, but I picked this player as well, and that was Salma Paralolo.
Yeah, no, coming off the bench and just absolutely being, for a player so young, she was then in situations that she was thrown in terms of real high pressure situations, she was phenomenal and scored some great goals throughout this tournament. I think that I'm really excited for her future, but she really, I think she ultimately stopped Linda Caicedo from winning Young Player of the tournament with how good she was throughout this tournament. But no, Salma Paralelo, phenomenal.
All right, well, I only had one other different player in my front two, and this is maybe a controversial pick, but I feel as though when Sweden walk away from this tournament, they need to challenge their own internal hierarchy and their thinking, because why wasn't Rebecca Blomqvist starting more games? Why is Stina Blackstenius a nailed-on starter? Why is Lena Hurtig their go-to substitution? Rebecca Blomqvist got it done in this tournament, and I am putting her in my team of the tournament, not just because of what she did, but because almost like a per minute, a pro rata contribution to Sweden in this tournament. So quickly, I'll whip through the three teams as we wrap up our teams of the tournament. Pokuah, you had Zecira Musovic in goal, Anderson left back, Greenwood and Ilstead in the middle, and Balya at right back. Your midfield three was Bonmati, Walsh, and Hermoso. Your forwards, Salma Paralolo, Miyazawa, and Hemp. Grace Maher, your team of the tournament was Mackenzie Arnold in goal, Olga Carmona left back, Greenwood and Ilstead in the middle, Lucy Bronze at right back, midfield trio of Hermoso, Bonmati, and Kyra Cooney-Cross, and a forward line of Linda Caicedo, Miyazawa, and Hemp. And my team was Mary Earps in goal, Salma Basher at left back, Alison Swaby and Amanda Ilstead in the middle, Michelle Alozi at right back, midfield four of Rolfo, Bonmati, Uchebi, and Gori, and then a front two of Blomqvist and Salma Paralolo. Pokuah, I assume your team is winning if these teams had to play against each other?
I certainly think we are winning, Taylor. I think we might win 5-0. I can't lie to you. That midfield is dominating the game.
I'll be a bit short on plays if we play each other.
Yeah, it might be. No, I've got it. My side's got it.
One to finish, Grace. Your focus now turns to preseason for the Liberty A-League. And of course, if you want to go and watch Grace's old team, Canterbury United, or her new team, Western United, you can go to keepup.com.au/LAP, get the Liberty A-League pass if you are 16 and under, or if you know people who are 16 and under, sign them up. They can get into games for free. We're going to have the celebration of the Matildas round to start the season. Fixtures not far away. It's in the works, maybe a week or two away, which is pretty exciting as well. Maybe even sooner, hopefully sooner. Grace, what goes through your mind now in this little gap before preseason starts?
What do I need to bring down to Melbourne? No, it is honestly, it's actually about making sure I'm ready, my body physically, but also I'm rested, ready for a longer season. It's going to be the first time that anyone in the A-League W has been able to play, 36-week contracts, 22 rounds, international breaks plus our preseason. So yeah, just honestly just focusing. There's a buzz amongst everyone and every player, I think, coming off the back of this World Cup. I'm really excited to see if there are a fair few teams that take up the World Cup legacy player option that's coming this year. And yeah, I'm just getting ready so that I can hit the ground running. Really excited to go and meet everyone down in Western as well. It's always very exciting coming into a new team and a new routine. But yeah, I just can't wait to be back in that professional environment. It's really hard for us in the off season when we're not in those environments. We miss it. And just looking forward. Only 2.5 weeks away now.
Grace, I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to you coming down to Melbourne and playing for Western United. Obviously, you're going to be with the new coach, Mark Torcaso. Obviously, his second season in the A-League Women's. What are you excited about playing, having Mark as your coach this season?
Yeah, I think the conversations I've had with Mark have been really honest and open and transparent. And that's one of my biggest, I guess, things that I love to be and what I look for in coaches. And very excited to learn a lot. I'm going down in a defensive role. So there's people at that club and ex-players like Andrew Durante and that have already, spoken about helping and growing and testing myself. Also excited to meet new players, work with the likes of Zimmerman and Keane, because I've had to defend them for many seasons now. And so, yeah, I'm really excited also to rejoin with some of my former teammates in the Toronto Twins, Emma Robers. So I'm looking forward to experiencing something new, getting myself out of my comfort zone and moving back to Melbourne.
I like that, Grace. You see, Melbourne is the best state, and you I feel like you're in for success now that you've chosen.
I think Pokuah is celebrating because she knows that there's going to be a few coffee catch-ups just to talk ball with Melbourne, Grace Maher over the journey.
I'm just saying that I've just been trying to tell people that Melbourne is the best state and we've got the best players. And now Grace is here. I feel like I'm only adding to that belief.
Do you know what's nice for the players too? In Canberra, I don't get to watch any live football at the A-League level because I'm either playing or we don't have a men's team. And I'm really excited to be able to watch a few A-League women's and A-League men's games again. I love doing that. So love watching and playing.
That's great to hear. And I'm sure that'll get cut for a plug for the coming season. Love hearing it. Now, Grace, I need to say some thank yous to wrap up Dub at the Cup because it's been an incredible World Cup. And just like you, we've heard from so many players and coaches. There is so much passion for football and intellectual property and knowledge in this league. Teresa Polias, Naomi Chinema, Nikki Flannery, Rolla Badawir, Kirsty Fenton, Emily Gielnick, Cannon Clough, Paige Zoyce, Ella Mestra Antonio, Carly Rossbacken, Jeff Hopkins, Mark Torcaso, Briley Henry, Dylan Holmes, Catherine Cannulli, Angie Beard, Grace Gill, Rebecca Stott, M. Husband, Izzy Hodgson, Hannah Keane, Tash Rigby, and yourself, Grace Maher. Awesome guests, awesome month. It's been an amazing way to follow the World Cup. Pokuah, Taryn Hedo, and myself, and the entire KEEPUP crew, our producer, Sam Cupid, our technical guru, Ben Waterworth, behind the scenes, they've done a phenomenal job. I just want to get those thanks out there and thank you, of course, to KEEPUP as well for making it happen and being a voice for the players during this tournament. The players in their own words. Pokuah, honestly, it's been awesome. And I feel as though, some real media stars have emerged and now we go and get to see them let their feet do the talking. But we also know that when it comes to post-match interviews or promoting their own clubs or growing the game, we've got some amazing talent that has put the game in a really good place.
No, we certainly do it. And yeah, I've got to reiterate what you said, Taro. There's so many people who put so much effort into making Dub at the Cup what it is, and it's been fantastic to be a part of it throughout this tournament. And we certainly have found some media stars because Grace Maher, I've labelled you as goated now in terms of the media landscape. I think you're absolutely fantastic, and getting to hear your opinions about football and learning stuff from you as well has been phenomenal. But
I'm going to read. Pokuah sent me a message while we're discussing who's going to ask the next question. Pokuah just writes, "You go, Grace is the goat, can't lie." I mean, that's so. Grace, thank you so much for joining us as our first and last guest on Dub at the Cup.
No, thank you so much, guys. And I want to say a big thank you for allowing me to be able to do what I love and talk about what I love. We don't get to do it a lot when we're on the field, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, we appreciate it, and we're excited to see more of you. And Taylor, thank you as well. You've done a fantastic job being a part of every single episode of Dub at the Cup. I know it must have been a long month for you, but an enjoyable one. But thank you, Taylor, and thank you, Grace. And it's going to be the last time I get to do the outro. The outro is going to be a little bit different this time. To catch all the latest news about the A-Leagues, the A-League women's and men's, and all things football, you can find it on keepup.com.au and find it on KEEPUP on any social media platform. But to listen back to this podcast one last time, you can find us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and anywhere else you listen. But for the last time, I've been Pokuah Frimpong. Thank you for listening to Dub at the Cup.